But a facial transplant, that's the place to get it. But it's a 22-hour operation.
Oh.
They have to find the right donor. It's got to be a size.
The car.
That's great.
Here's the catch. The consumer must make the first 2 payments of the loan or lease and must be employed for at least 90 days at the time of the purchase. And it says the program won't cost you a dime.
Good for them.
I think it's too good to be true.
Oh, I thought what happened to being a glass half full kind of guy?
I'm not here to, I'm not here to rain on everybody's parade out here today.
That's not how it works.
I'm just suggesting, just suggesting.
All right.
Read the fine print.
Moving on. That woman who was mauled by the chimpanzee in Connecticut is now getting the best medical care in the country. Charla Nash is now at the Cleveland Clinic, where she will receive treatments from elite teams of surgeons for horrific injuries to her face and hands. The famed Ohio hospital recently performed this country's first face transplant. So could that be an option for Ms. Nash? Dr. Mark Siegel, and Fox News medical contributor, joins us now. Doctor, good morning to you.
Good morning, Megan.
Her injuries were just really catastrophic, according to those who saw her and treated her. They said her hands were almost ripped off, that her face was completely unrecognizable. They couldn't even tell if she was a woman or a man when they came upon her. Is it likely that that's the reason they transferred her to Cleveland Clinic, so that she could be the next person in this country to receive a face transplant?
Well, Megan, I agree with the first part of that point. I think it's why they transferred her to Cleveland Clinic, because this is one of the top places in the country for facial reconstruction. And that's, no small issue, because there's a lot of techniques involved, using tissue, using graft, using bone, pieces of bone, muscle, nerve. I mean, it's incredible the operations they do. As far as a facial transplant per se, it's too early to tell, because they first have to stabilize her. It's incredible that she lived with all this blood loss and then the pain. I mean, a terrible situation. But now she's in the best hands. My vote would be probably that she won't need an actual transplant, and I'll tell you why. Because the reports say that they've preserved part of her nose and facial structure, so that gives them an anchor. It gives them something to build on. So if they are able to use her own tissue, and there's enough of it, then they might be able to get away without it. But a facial transplant, that's the place to get it. But it's a 22-hour operation.
Oh.
They have to find the right donor. It's got to be a size fit. And then, of course, you end up needing immunosuppressive drugs for the rest of your life. So it's actually something to be avoided as much as we talk about it in a glamorous way.
So you don't do a facial transplant unless, like a burn victim. Basically, there's nothing there to work with.
That's right. I mean, there's some exceptions to that, by the way. Let me point out, and this is very important. We have to restore her ability to eat properly, to breathe properly, and to see properly. And if each of those things can be done, in a segmental way, then we wouldn't have to replace all the skin on the face. And again, it has to do with finding the right donor. I think it's too soon to be saying that that's what's going to be happening. But one thing is for sure, she's going to need extensive work here.
Is it possible? I mean, short of a face transplant, how do they rebuild her nose? How do they rebuild her eyes? How do they rebuild her chin and her mouth, all of which were essentially completely gouged?
That's a great point. And the way, believe it or not only can you use bone transplants from other parts of the body, but with using plastics and the kind of alloys and compounds we have now that we use in all over the body, not just in hips and knees, you actually can create, I mean, it's really artistry here. This is artistry. And you can create orbits of the eyes, and you can rebuild parts of the nose. So it all depends on how much you have to work with to start with. And from the news reports, I think they have something to use here to build on.
Doctor, can she ever have any sort of a normal life after this?
Well, one of the reasons for these extensive techniques, by the way, Megan, is, the person in Cleveland Clinic who did the first transplant there has been saying, I went from the hands to the face because I was seeing all these scarred up victims. And these people are incredibly successful at decreasing the amount of scars in the long run. So, yes, I think she actually can go back to a normal life. Obviously, the emotional trauma here is hugely significant as well and has to be addressed.
How do you get past that? I mean, how on earth does a victim like this get past that trauma?
Well, through many years of psychotherapy, medications, even some of the medications we were discussing on the program earlier in the week, that you can use medicines to help you through post-traumatic stress disorder. She's definitely going to have that, and she's going to need many years of therapy here, in addition to all the facial work.
Yeah, and you need the support of family and friends, and I'm sure the nation, there'll be an outpouring of support for her when you know, she comes out, she makes herself available when she's ready for that, because this poor woman was nothing but a victim.
Totally. I think she's a very sympathetic person.
Well, thankfully she's got, truly, I mean, this Cleveland Clinic can't do much better than that. It's like Cleveland Clinic and Hopkins, two of the best, right?
Not for this. This is one of the #1 places in the country for this. Cleveland Clinic is great overall, but this is one of their things.
Good. So she's at the right place.
Right
Dr.
place.
Mark Siegel, thanks so much.
Thanks, man.
One of my nieces